What did you do?
Working.
I worked and then I went to my parents' house.
Okay.
Morning, class.
Morning,
Professor.
How was everyone's weekend?
Good.
Great.
Yours?
Amazing balls.
Who got a chance to see the news this weekend?
The media coverage was really interesting on,
Well, even this past weekend too about the shooting.
the shooting this weekend. It was like primarily centered on race and the way that like race was portrayed in the media.
I think that there are many ways that we can talk about the portrayal of race in the media in relation to the class.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we can talk about like news coverage and popular culture. Like those are both really important aspects within today's culture and the way that media outlets cover it, whether they're like left-leaning or right-leaning.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Anyone else?
For example, going off of what they said, when there's a crime surrounding white males, there's always a vast injustice regarding race in the story coverage whenever you see the two different, demographics of people. Like, for example, the Dylan Roof case with the Charleston shootings. He was a 25-year-old white supremacist who committed a mass shooting in South Carolina, and back in 2015, if you guys remember. And that was part because the Black Lives Matter was a catalyst to this, the whole movement. So when the news reported on the shooting, they used personal photos of him, including one of him burning the American flag, instead of like the mugshot photo that you would see with any other race.
Interesting.
Right, kind of going off what she says, it's just kind of interesting how they portrayed him as a white boy who had like mental issues and like simply just like disregarding his heinous attack. And if it were to be like an African American, the media would have included a bad photo and highlighted their like past transgressions. Like it's interesting how the media portrays like certain races differently.
Okay, so what are some examples in the media today where there's African American stereotypes where you see it in either television, on the big screen, or little screen?
So like we talked about like movies and like film, like TV.
Absolutely. So we got film.
Like advertisements, maybe. Politics.
Politics.
Music for sure.
Music for sure.
Sports.
Okay, we'll stop there just for the sake of time. But yes, those are some really good examples. So what about news? We talked a little bit about this morning, about Trayvon Martin.
Right, just like the different news channels like Fox News and CNN, how they kind of portray different identities per like the victim. Like Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, for instance, like I know in CNN, the news story was kind of like focused more on Trayvon Martin of like his innocence and him just like going to getting like Skittles and a nice tea. And then the Fox News kind of talked about more of like Zimmerman and his why he did it, and like kind of more focused on him and kind of portrayed Trayvon Martin being bad and like because he's kind of gotten in some trouble in and out of schools and things like that. So they definitely, the Fox News and CNN are very different in that aspect.
Yeah, like Sarah said, in the Trayvon Martin case from 2012, Trayvon Martin was a 17-year-old boy. He's black, and he was shot and killed by George Zimmerman. He was walking home from the local, what was it called?
I think it was the 7-Eleven or something.
And he had his hoodie on, and Zimmerman shot him because he looked suspicious.
So right now what we're going to do is we're going to take some time and we're going to watch some news coverage that was taken about this article and how the left and the right political entities kind of portrayed Trayvon Martin.
But I am urging the parents of black and Latino youngsters particularly to not let their children go out wearing hoodies. I think the hoodie is as much responsible for Trayvon Martin's death as George Zimmerman was.
What do you mean?
When you see a kid walking, Juliet, when you see a kid walking down the street, particularly a dark-skinned kid like my son Cruz, who I constantly yelled at when he was going out wearing a damn hoodie or those pants around his ankles, take that hood off. People people look at you and what's the instant identification? What's the instant association? It's those crime scene surveillance tapes. Every time you see someone sticking up a 7-Eleven, the kid's wearing a hoodie. Every time you see a mugging on a surveillance camera, or they get the old lady in the alcove, it's a kid wearing a hoodie. You have to recognize that this whole stylizing yourself as a gangster, you're going to be a gangster wannabe, well, people are going to perceive you as a menace. That's what happens. It is an instant reflexive action.
So you feel like this is a setup to show Trayvon Martin as a bad kid, and somehow that influenced his behavior the night he encountered George Zimmerman?
This is a desperate attempt to try to influence the jury pool, and it is not going to be relevant. It's not going to be admitted. The only photographs that are relevant are the photographs of Trayvon Martin on the night he was shot and killed.
Okay. Now, how are these text messages relevant if, as Ben Crump says, what matters is what happened the night Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman had their altercation?
Well, of course, today is not a determination of relevancy. The first level is whether or not it's discoverable, and it certainly is discoverable. We found this information on Trayvon Martin's phone. Actually, the state had the same information we found out. So the question of relevance is something that's determined at trial. Right now, it is discoverable, and if we ever intend to use it at trial, we may or may not, we have to disclose it to the state, and that's what was done today.
Okay, but a lot of people out there are going to say, well, it's talk of Trayvon Martin talking about using drugs and fighting and things like that, and it may play into stereotypes.
Dating him?
In real life.
So what did you guys think of the video?
So what we're seeing from the video is that white people are given leeway and sympathy based off of mental health issues to justify their actions, which is shown in the media. If it was a white person, they would not be blaming the clothing of what they were wearing.
Absolutely.
And the media presents black people like Trayvon Martin, tying him to a racial stereotype to portray him as a criminal within the case. When really Martin was the victim, he was still perceived as deviant.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Putting it in their media and just promoting it and just continuing that type of generalization just perpetuates the negative ideas that we conceptualize in our minds and how we think that African Americans should be acting in our society. And we mirror that off each other. Can everyone agree on that?
Yeah, so I think that basically we do know that like I said, oh my god, what was the freaking thing? Art imitates reality, and like also language creates reality. So what we see is like what becomes in the world. So if we're seeing these negative things being said, that's the things that we start to think, and we're so easily influenced by the news outlets and those people who have power and who get to like kind of distribute their negative messages is what becomes the truth. And so we start to see these people as scary or just deviant in a way, like you said, and creates that master narrative about people of color, primarily like black people, black individuals, black teenagers, and things like that.
Do you think in a sense it's like almost like brainwashing? Like it almost is like in a sense wants us
It very much can be, yes.
to like believe to see in certain aspects of one individual versus another.
And only showing like the bad parts, like they don't show the good things of them, obviously.
Absolutely.
Because if it's always being shown, whatever other outlets, social media, news, radio, anything.
Right.
It's
Because
like
as you saw in last week's assignment when we talked about how the dad was brainwashed on just watching Fox, right? They feed on that fear, and the audience reacts on that fear, and so they internalize that all the information they're getting from those outlets. They're internalizing that to be their reality. What I want to get through to you guys is that the media is constantly perpetuating an oppressive rhetoric that is also forceful. Therefore, it negatively portrays people of color in a bad light, and it generalizes them in so many different ways. Language creates reality language creates reality, and the media is creating a pretty bad reality of people of color. As an audience, we should question their motives. We should question how they present people of color and minorities in general, because it's important to critically reflect the information that's being given to us. And it's, as communication majors, we have a responsibility to take affirmative action and to change society for the better. If I don't have any more questions, that's all I got for you guys. I will see you next Tuesday.